Hello and most welcome to 858. We're having a rather nice morning here. It's sunny and I think it's getting warm. Sitting in a waiting room, wanting to have my eyes diagnosed. Hope for the best. I thought I might as well record one of these lectures. And I would like to talk about a new view of reality. This actually goes back to the very name of the lecture series, Heidegger, and his completely different view of reality and how it's built up. He constructed new words that cannot be translated into ordinary language. So what you need to do is learn at least, I would say, 30 of the different expressions, and they will arrange the order in relation to each other. But do not never ask what a singular word is meant in ordinary language. That will not work. You cannot say that, for instance, Sinn means care or something like that, or that Dasein has something to do with an I or the outside world, or the both, or neither. This lecture 858 has connections to his take on the so-called ground of reality, or rather that there isn't a ground in the ordinary way. He does not deny reality. Actually, on the contrary, he says the idea of materialism is the very same thing as idealism. And of course, that is not a common conclusion. So you need new words for this. And two of these words, or four I should mention maybe, it's thea or thea, and alla thea or alla thea. This is covering and uncovering. It has connections to the words remembering and forgetting. And aletheia is not forgetting, and that is remembrance. And this is important to remember, no pun intended. This is a great part of how he sees reality developing. I will not explain what these words mean, as I said in the beginning. But what you can do is you can look at it from a completely different picture. And today I will choose the picture of science. That is neurology and fractal science. Let's start with neurology. And this is rather fitting since we are at the eye clinic. I just have some droplets put in my eyes, and my vision is slowly becoming more and more blurred. Well, at least that's what I think. We learned a lot about seeing only in the last 10 years. And the whole idea that we see the whole world around us directly is completely wrong. Our visual area is not more than 3/4 of an inch times 3/4 of an inch, about 2 centimeters times 2 centimeters. That is the only sharpness we have. And formerly there was an idea that we got a perception from something called the outside, never defined. You see, this is an inheritance from the Greek, the whole idea of the outside. And from the outside came light, reflected from the things, it came into the eyes, and within the nerve behind the eye, called the vision nerve. This was transmitted into the brain to make a vision of some sort. And that was projected into the back of the eye or back of the brain and somehow transferred into an image. Well, that idea is easily to be discarded by the idea with a counter objection of the homunculus, who is seeing this picture, and so forth. And it's ridiculous in so many instances. But first now, since 10 years ago, it's also discarded within neurology. The whole thing around you is sort of a makeup, but it's not a makeup because the other idea is ridiculous from the beginning. You see what I mean? So this doesn't lead to idealism. This rather goes in the direction of being more grounded in the reality that you are actually in. I think that was well put. Sorry to tap my own shoulder. The reality that you are really in. You are guided by your vision, that is still true. And you're dependent on a good understanding on what is vision. So it's an important task to go so deep as possible into the very subject of what is vision. But it is not taking up something from the outside. Your movement and your body balance are a very important part of this thing called vision.
Jag söker Bo. Hej.
Hej.
The visionary thing in itself is contacted or related to what one would call action or object. Object in the way of having a purpose in what you do. And we all see different levels of accuracy. I use the word accuracy. It's an interesting thing. We do not see the same thing, and the quality of what we're seeing is connected to what sort of balance do we have. And there is no equality on this subject whatsoever. So oddly enough, at the very base of what is reality, how we actually perceive the thing we are in, there is no justice, so to speak. Social justice doesn't go down to the level of reality. And one other thing that we know is the higher quality, the more exchange you have from your experience. It goes with vision, it goes to all the other senses as well. And that will form the base, or is how the quality of your action will be. And this makes a whole lot of more sense. Think of the original cell. It didn't differentiate between perception, action and movement. Why would we do that? Wouldn't make any sense for evolution to develop human beings as just passive receptors of reality. What evolutionary sense would that be? And to bring the thought even deeper down to ground, what will be the reason for me as a surviving, wanting to survive individual to have a vision that is completely differentiated from the aim of what I'm supposed to want, what I want to do? Doesn't make any sense either, I'd say. So you see. So you see, there is a lot of problems with this passive idea. And once again, this shows how clearly how the fundamentals of the original amnesia comes into all strands of science. It builds the foundation, so it seeps in everywhere. and it was completely dominating within the science of cognition, in neurology, and also down to vision science, science of vision. So these things are a little bit more important than philosophy would be, because philosophy is also completely dependent on what what is laid ground, the dogma of the Gestalt. Third thing to add to this neurology approach is that there are twice amount of nerve leading out to the eyes as leading from the eyes. Twice the amount of nerves. You see once more the whole idea of an outside cut off from our actions, cut off from who we are, what we think, our intentions, our emotions, who I am, and so forth, is a complete, it's turned over, it's a fallacy. Fallacy really to the ground. Actually, this idea, rather than being helpful, leads to other stuff. It leads to a staticness of vision. So this is something they started to scratch on. Why is there so much myopia, especially in the Western world? Why is this staring-like way of looking around at the world? I cannot imitate that now with my drops in my eyes, but it's a bit like looking for objects or whatever those things could be. And it's singling in on things instead of having a wide view. This is very likely the cause of myopia. You overstrain your eyes. You use them in a way that is directed by this wrong idea of taking in the reality, and you sort of prehends the movement. You don't let the word come to you. You try to seek it out, oddly enough. So this is another take of the metaphor with the cave. You think things are in the world of ideas and you really try hard to grasp them. You're looking around in the cave, and one could compare this seeking gaze, that we look around for the objects. We strain our eyes, we get myopia, we get tired eyes, we get also pain in the neck, because this staring look throws the beautiful balance we have between the head and the antler-occipital cervical out of balance. It leads to problems. So it has effects on all levels, and this is also one of the indications of schizophrenia. It's an even sharper gaze, looking for the objects, constantly sort of spanning the area, trying to take in as much as possible to know what the world consists of. On one level, at looking at it, it is rather a sound idea. If you want to know what's around in the world, so you could survive into the next movement, and you can sort of decide what's around you, so you find your way and so forth, it does make sense. So the mistake is on one level below, and that level we haven't been able to reach before, the mirror image. And by doing that, we can continue to have the idea of it's good to know where you are, and you can add it's even better to be localized in reality, and it's even better to know your next move. but you don't have this idea of the world being distinctly outside of you. And neither do you have the idea of the world being only in your head or in your imagination. So um, you don't have to fall in either trap, not the one of empiricism or reductionism, neither in the trap of idealism. They are actually much more similar than they are different. So, what sort of conclusions can you add here? I'm just going to put something in. It's actually rather nice to have this blurred vision. I was surprised, but it goes hand in hand. There's no longer a possibility for me to have a staring gaze because of the droplets I had in my eyes. They are enlarging my pupil, so we'll be able to have a diagnosis of the eye, of the inner workings of the eye. This is very similar to the goggles that eye skins recommend against myopia. They can be ordered, and it take away the possibility of actually seeing objects in the ordinary way. But what you can also do is shut your eyes for maybe an hour a day or 2 hours a day, and at the same time move around in some fashion. But let's continue here. We have two realizations coming from the mirror image as usual. It's usually come in two pairs. The first one, the very firmness, or whatever you call it, of the world needs to be questioned. It's the same old subject in front of the object in static space. It doesn't have any truth to it, but the reason for it not to be questioned before, it's that it was never verbalized. It was never a hypothesis of the world. And we could call this the dogma of the static object that has a certain set of properties that are always fixed to the object, a little bit like the idea of there being two sets of properties, one that belongs to the object and the other one that belongs to the subject. Something that easily can be questioned. It's a division made. And also look at Bertrand Russell. He indirectly shows that he has this perception of reality when he says that there is a given set. Sorry, but I'll come back.